Receiving an allowance without having to handle household chores might sound like a pleasant perk, but the constant sarcasm from my mother-in-law often makes it less enjoyable. At 32, working as a freelance web designer, I live with my husband Ethan and his mother, a setup that comes with its own share of challenges, especially given our different views on work and domestic roles. Before marriage, I worked in a corporate environment. Transitioning to freelancing felt like a natural step, welcomed by both my employer and me. Thanks to my past connections, projects continue to flow steadily, sparing me the grind of commuting and allowing more time for household responsibilities. While this arrangement satisfies me, my traditional mother-in-law views it differently. To her, a wife should be a homemaker above all else, a belief she reminds me of often. Ethan tries to defend me, insisting that modern couples share both financial and household responsibilities, but she refuses to see freelancing as real work. In her eyes, it's just a side job, insignificant compared to my husband's salary. Even though I manage to balance work and house chores, she remains unimpressed, clinging to the idea that I should fit into the mold of a conventional housewife. At times, I feel she still sees me as the outsider who took her only son. Since my father-in-law passed away 5 years ago, she has grown increasingly dependent on Ethan. While it bothers him occasionally, I suspect there's also a quiet pride in knowing she relies on him so much. We live in the house my father-in-law bought 3 decades ago, now solely owned by my mother-in-law. As the mortgage was covered by life insurance, the space suits us well, offering a small but comfortable home and even a proper area for my work. Despite frequent tension, the house often hosts her circle of longtime friends, women who have shared this neighborhood for over 30 years. When they visit, I set aside my projects to act as hostess, serving coffee and sweets. Soon after, the chatter begins, inevitably revolving around complaints about daughters-in-law. I've learned to smile politely as they compare stories, each trying to outdo the other with tales of irresponsibility or defiance. Rarely does anyone have something kind to say. On the rare occasion a friend compliments me, "Your daughter-in-law works and still manages the household," my mother-in-law dismisses it, brushing my work off as nothing more than a side hustle. Eventually, the conversation always circles back to money. They laugh about daughters-in-law who spend on themselves and question out loud how much I truly earn. Their tone makes it clear they believe a husband's earnings belong to the family, while a wife's income is barely worth considering. Tired of hearing the same judgments, I slip on headphones and bury myself in my work, shutting out their voices. One evening, during dinner, Ethan mentioned wanting to buy a new car. His mother immediately interjected, asking why he even needed my approval. Despite Ethan calmly explaining that it was a family decision, she argued that since he was the one driving, he should simply choose whatever he liked. Ethan, caught between us as always, turned to me for help. I diffused the situation by leaving the choice up to him. Still, the moment laid bare the ongoing dynamic in our home. Ethan feels compelled to consult both me and his mother before making any major decision, a habit his mother wholeheartedly encourages. My father-in-law had always been self-centered, making decisions on his own without considering anyone else. My mother-in-law often complained about it, yet she accepted such behavior as normal. Ethan, my husband, grew up in that environment, and as a result, he was determined never to appear selfish. Ironically, that same determination often left him unable to take a stand. Whenever Ethan asked for my opinion before making a decision, my mother-in-law accused me of being too strict or controlling. I would be caught off guard, unsure of how to respond, since I did openly voice my concerns. What surprised me most was that Ethan sided with her, blaming me for his tendency to seek my approval before acting. Months into our marriage, I noticed a painful truth. Ethan never defended me in front of his mother. Even in private, his apologies felt increasingly hollow. The incident over buying a new car exposed this weakness completely. At first, he considered my perspective, but in the end, he yielded to his mother and left me standing alone. That was when I began questioning our future. I wished Ethan could distinguish kindness from indecisiveness, and I wished my mother-in-law would be more direct instead of lashing out at me. A month later, Ethan's new car arrived, a sleek, extravagant model that cost $660,000. His mother was thrilled, showering him with admiration, but I was stunned. The price was staggering. When I confronted him about the financial strain it would cause, he brushed it off, offering to take out a loan as if it were nothing. My mother-in-law leapt to his defense, reminding me that I had given him freedom to decide. When I questioned the practicality of such an expense, she snapped, "It's not like you pay, so you have no right to complain." Her words cut deep. I reminded her that I also contributed financially, but she dismissed my work as a side job, claiming it could never compare to Ethan's supposed income of over $100,000 a year. She looked at me with open contempt. As I tried to explain that my salary helped sustain the household, I realized Ethan had quietly left the room, avoiding the conflict altogether. That night, after enduring too much for too long, I reached my breaking point. Her final insult, "A daughter-in-law like you should just get out," was the last straw. "Understood," I told her calmly. "Then I will leave." I packed my essentials, carried my computer out of my workspace, and walked toward the door. My mother-in-law's furious eyes followed me, while Ethan remained hidden in his room. As I stepped outside, she screamed after me, "If you come back, it will only be to sign divorce papers." Her cruelty shocked me, but I refused to engage further. Instead, I went to my parents' house, where my mother welcomed me in surprise. I couldn't bring myself to explain every detail, only that Ethan, who once cherished me, had changed. Sharing my burden with them was a small relief. Since Ethan and I had no children, my mother advised me to consider divorce while I was still financially independent. That weekend, with my father's help, I moved the rest of my belongings out. Neither Ethan nor his mother appeared. Quietly, I slipped divorce papers under Ethan's door, asking him to sign. His indifferent voice came from behind it, "I've signed it. We're done here." Just like that, my marriage ended. I felt sadness, of course, but also a strange sense of clarity. After 2 years in a house with few happy memories, I carried the papers to the city office and filed them. If everything could be resolved with one sheet of paper, then so be it. For a while, I stayed with my parents. My father was wary, warning me that Ethan or his mother might show up at any time. I thought it unlikely, but he was right. 2 months later, Ethan suddenly called from an unknown number. At first, I ignored it, but he kept trying until I answered. His voice was frantic. "Why didn't you pick up? And why isn't my phone working?" I told him curtly to call his carrier, but something clicked in my mind. I asked about deposits into our joint account. For months, I had managed the household by adding my salary to his, since his income from selling health products fluctuated. But after I left, the deposits dropped. Without my contributions, his lavish spending, especially the car loan, had caught up to him. I explained calmly that I would no longer cover their living expenses. I resisted the urge to say, "You reap what you sow," and simply hung up. Later, my father's prediction came true. One morning, the intercom buzzed insistently. To my shock, my mother-in-law was at the door, her face full of rage. She accused me of failing to make deposits, claiming their utilities had been cut off. Ethan tried weakly to stop her, but she brushed him aside, insisting he earned $5,000 a month and couldn't possibly be struggling. I corrected her. It was my income that had been $5,000. Ethan, cornered, finally admitted his real take-home pay was barely $500. The truth stunned her. She stared at me, speechless, then begged, "Julia, come back. It was a joke when I told you to leave." But it was far too late. I refused firmly, reminding her that Ethan and I were already divorced. My father stepped in and ordered them to leave, threatening to call the police if they lingered. They left in humiliation. In time, I heard from acquaintances about what happened next. Ethan and his mother had to sell their house and land to cover debts, including the car loan. They moved into a cramped apartment. Ethan eventually squandered what little remained through gambling and disappeared. His mother, left alone, was later diagnosed with dementia and placed in a nursing home. As for me, life moved forward. I continued my work, now free from their shadows. Eventually, I met someone new through my job, a man who respects my independence and builds his own life without expecting me to carry the weight. We haven't spoken of marriage yet, but for the first time, I feel that a future together is possible.